All right. In case you didn't hear that too, I have started the recording.
Very good. All right, I think the polite 9:31 is a good time to start since I get to take care of all the housekeeping before we go. So welcome to the Interschool Council's Hot Topic on Lower Merion School District Equity Work. Presenting to us today are Ms. Shawanna James-Coles, the Lower Merion School District Director of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging, and Megan Shafer, Assistant to the Superintendent, who among many responsibilities also manages our policies and helps maintain a safe environment for all. I am Cheryl Masterman, and Allison Crawford and I are the co-presidents of the ISC. As a reminder, the ISC is a parent guardian volunteer organization that connects the district's 11 HSAs and, among other things, hosts parent ed evening events and hot topics every second Tuesday morning of the month for our entire community. At these hot topics, we bring in speakers of interest from the district to these open forums to talk about various matters affecting our kids. Mark your calendars for our next hot topic, which will take place on Tuesday, February 14th at 9:30 a.m. for a presentation on social emotional learning via this same Zoom link. And on Thursday, January 26th at 7 p.m., our Parent Ed series, in conjunction with the Committee for Special Education, will be presenting trauma-informed care for parents and caregivers with Dr. Avi Koffler from the Montgomery County Intermediate Unit, also via Zoom. Today, you'll have the opportunity to ask questions via the raise hand function. I'll be calling on you in the order you raise hands and as time allows. Please be mindful of keeping your questions brief and concise so we can all participate. Please also do not use names and state your questions generally rather than personally, as we will be recording this session for future posting to our ISC YouTube channel. And now, without further ado, I'll turn it over to our speakers.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. I would first like to thank Cheryl and Allison for the welcome and allowing me to speak today. We met about 2 months ago, and I've been excited since our initial meeting to talk about, to discuss today. One of the things that I'm really excited about and gracious to them is I asked, could I have a little more time so that I can spend time in the buildings. When I first arrived, I did a learning listening tour and I met with all of the principals and I met with assistant principals, but I didn't have an opportunity to meet students and I didn't have an opportunity to interact with teachers outside of some professional development. And so I do want to thank you for the gift of time, because I think when you see the presentation, I've tried to infuse some of the visits that I've had in the buildings in this presentation. And so I am truly grateful to you and to this group for this opportunity. I also want to thank Ms. Megan Shafer, who will help co-present this presentation with me from the Office of Equity and Compliance, and Dr. Alexis McGloin, who's always in my corner and to give me support. She'll jump in and rescue me if needed. The one ask is that if you allow us, please, to go through the presentation and then ask questions at the end. It'll help us with the flow, and then I can write some things down as you ask questions and be able to answer you, if that's okay with the group. And so Megan, you want to get us started with the presenting the screen? So we said hello. I'll have to tell you a funny story. When we were working on this presentation, I said, Megan, we don't have our Bitmojis. And she said, oh, did you want to be serious? I was like, no, we want to have fun. I think this group will enjoy our Bitmojis. So you'll see these Bitmojis throughout the presentation. I think they capture our personality. And in our office, we work hard, but we really enjoy each other's company across the board, the entire administrative team. Next slide, please. So one of the things I wanted to start off by illuminating and highlighting is that this work, this DEIB work, is connected across PDE, PSBA. And so with PDE, we have here the Equitable Practices Hub. There's a page on the Pennsylvania Department of Education's website, and it talks about the equity pillars. And it also lets us know that this equity work spans. We look at equitable practices, we look at data, we're looking at academic equity, we're looking at self-awareness and how that's manifested in our program. And we're looking at family and community engagement and hearing voice from our communities, such as today. We're looking at discipline equity, disproportionality. And so they have these overarching pillars, but then what the PDE breaks it down to, what does it look like? What do these pillars look like in our schools? What do they look like in our classrooms? And what do they look like in as an individual? And how can I take hold of this work? So I wanted to start with this overarching and then show how I've kind of like looked at this and drilled it down to Lower Merion. So we started by looking at PDE, the pillars, and how we intersect our work. One of the things, the overarching definition from PDE is that in order for children to do their best, we have to create an environment where students are able to thrive regardless of their race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, gender identity, expression. We have to provide opportunities for them to learn free from discrimination, fear, and harassment. That's what PDE, that's the mantra, that's the charge from PDE. Next slide, please. Then PSBA, the Pennsylvania School Board Associations, one of their tasks is, and what I love about this is equity is the foundation. And when equity is the foundation, it trickles all the way up to the students. It's woven into the school structure through actions, plans, policy. You know, we have our equity policy. It shares our collective direction between the district, the school leaders, policymakers, decision makers. But what I really appreciate in what PSBA has outlined is that there is this relationship between equity, the school board, administration, teachers and staff, and family and community, like we have here today. And if we're all working in tangent together, we can meet the needs of our students. You look here at this graphic, it's transportation, our climate and safety, partnerships, community partnerships, all of those things, curriculum, food services, all of these things have to be in place so that we can make sure that we are meeting the needs of our learners. And this is what PSBA says. So we have PDE, what do they say? Now we have what PSBA says. Next slide. And so when I started, I came in because I had already sat on the state level with PDE and PSBA and planning and working through equity. So when I came to Lower Merion in July, and my presentations in the summer, we did this DEIB at the dance party. And I know I mentioned it the last time, and some of our people saw it on Facebook, and it was wonderful because one of the things we wanted to make sure that here in Lower Merion School District, that we had an understanding of what these terms mean. What does equality mean? What does diversity mean? What does equity mean? What does inclusion mean? And what does belonging mean? We've all had some experience at a party. And so this summer, we engaged in a DEIB at the dance party activity with our administrators, with our new teachers. Yesterday, Amy Buckman and I began filming vignettes that'll come out to the community on this terminology. So it's not just here that we're talking about it in our school and in our district, but that it's also we're going to be sending it out to the community. We've changed this graphic. We have another graphic that we're using with the same concept that'll go to our elementary school students, as well as it will go to our high school students, so they'll have an understanding of what these terms are. Equality is that everyone gets the same, right? Everyone's getting the same thing. Well, we know that that's not what we need. We need to have equity so that people can get what they need. But we start with equality. Everyone received this invitation to the dance party. Diversity is that there is representation. And when you look, even if you look at our screen here, the diversity, gender, our age, our education, our experience level, all those things help us understand diversity, right? That we're all not the same. Our experiences are different. And then we get into equity. How are we getting to this party? Did we take a train? Did we take a plane? Did we take a paratransit? How did we get there? Was there a way to get to this dance party? And inclusion is our voice. How did we illuminate our voice? Did we have an opportunity to talk about decorations and did we talk about the menu? Was my voice included in this? And then if you have equality, diversity, equity, inclusion in place, then you get to that place of belonging. And that's what we've been branding here in Lower Merion since August. We've been talking about building belonging. How do we make sure that we have these components in place? And how do we make sure our students, when they walk into our classrooms, into our buildings, that they feel a sense of belonging? I was at Lower Merion High School the other day, and Dr. Johnson was at the door. Every student, whether they spoke back to him or not, he said, "Good morning. Good morning. How are you today?" Do you know how many children may not have someone that says good morning to them in the beginning? If I lived in a home where maybe my parent is at work and I had to get myself out of the door, but to have the administrator of the building stand at the door to welcome us into that space was truly remarkable. Then you go to classrooms. I've been in buildings as people are changing classes, or the teachers are standing at the door welcoming the students in. That starts that sense of belonging, that you belong here. I care that you showed up and you came into our building. And I believe, I'm a parent, I believe as parents, that's what we want for our children. We want, when our children are coming into the doors of our school buildings, that someone is greeting them and someone is making them feel like they belong and that they're safe, value, heard, and that there is value in you coming and showing up every day. Next slide, please, Megan. So as I said, we started our campaign yesterday with our video vignettes that's coming out, and it's called Building Blocks. And so one of the things, if you come into the district building, right outside of the boardroom, you'll see pictures. We created our belonging house, that we're building this belonging, our schoolhouse. And of course, those same components that I discussed, diversity, equity, inclusion, that builds belonging. This, if you look at emails from some of us, you start to see the emails. We're talking about it with our equity liaisons. We have a hashtag. When Amy Buckman is sending out communications, that you'll see our hashtag for building belonging. We're asking, when you send things in, tag it to our hashtag of building belonging, because we have to be partners in this work. I am but one person, and I say this all the time. I'm one person, but I listen to everything that people share with me. I believe in the collective wisdom of the group. No one has all the answers to every problem, but the collective wisdom of the group. You know this district more than I do. You know the community better than I do. I'm learning it and I'm willing to learn, but I believe that there's value in the collective wisdom of the group. And so if you see things, you hear things that go along with our Building Belonging campaign, I'm asking you, please share our hashtag. Next slide, please. DEIB is also anchored in our All Forward plan. And so here, just again, I've only been here since July, but these are some of the areas that I thought right now we're tackling. So we're looking at it through cultural proficiency, through our CP lessons, through our collaborative learning, elevating student voice, community connections, such as this wonderful group here, and meaningful growth metrics, which you heard if you were on last night with the data presentation, how we're trying to meet the needs of our students through growth and achievement. Next slide, please. And so one of the things, and this is not exhaustive, so please understand this. One of the things I did, and I shared this in the equity committee meeting, is that I looked at that All Forward plan and just try to put a couple things, a couple bullets in to show how this is manifesting here in Lower Merion right now. And so we have a transformative curriculum. We have our CP for Kids lessons that they go out. And this is one of, Dr. Mumi always says that we are a premier district. When he says that, it is really true. It's not a platitude, but when we look at the fact that we can have CP for Kids lessons in our elementary schools on the same day, same week, that kids are learning, listening to stories, having and interacting with text and sharing, that's huge. And it's something that's not translated across the Commonwealth. Building-based equity liaisons. We're one of a few districts that have equity liaisons. We know that our teachers are the boots on the ground. They're in the classrooms. And so I meet with a group of teacher leaders monthly, and we have meetings and we're talking about what's going on in their buildings. How can I provide support? Where can I come in? When are you having your equity cultural proficiency lessons and building meetings that I can come and be a part of it? Since Lower Merion is one of the founding members of the Delaware Valley Consortium for Excellence and Equity through the University of Penn. And so since September, well, prior to that, but since September, we've been really looking at making sure teachers and principals and support staff are attending some of these sessions, and then they're coming back and giving turnaround training and highlighting what's being learned in these sessions. So far we've had resolving DEI conflict. We're talking about instructional practices for belonging, gender 101 and expression and identity. We're talking about mental health, transgender, how we support transgender and gender diverse students. How do we support our BIPOC girls in schools? And there's also a session today that we have 3 teacher leaders attending and an administrator. They'll come back and share out to the group. We're talking about how we're elevating our student voice. I've been meeting with students. I've been at Lower Merion to one of their meetings, and I've been through at Harrington for one of their meetings. But I'm also going into our elementary schools, and I've been reading this book on building belonging, and it's been wonderful. Last week I read to 6 classrooms, no, 7. I was supposed to read to 6 in one day, and as I was leaving, someone saw me in the hallway and said, "Can you read to my class as well?" And so I read to 7 classrooms in one day, and it was amazing. And it was 2nd and 3rd graders who really understood the concept of belonging and kindness, and if a new person came into the district, what could they do? I talked about it so much, and this is just an aside, that I'm a doctoral student at Immaculata University, and they actually wrote a story about me in this lesson because I was so excited about my experience with the students. We have this spirit of community. We have ISC, which is here, CSC, we have GAIN, we have Power, Mainline, a group. We have Box Lunch and a book. We have Race. We have Race for Education. We have Hughes. We have CARE, GSIB, BASIS, AITF, and we have a lot of community service events that just shows the spirit of the community and how, again, that collective power and that collective wisdom and how it comes together to meet the needs, and how we're working to meet the needs and striving to meet the needs of the students, and how we're building belonging. Our equity liaisons are also a part of a book study, building belonging through a culture of dignity. And it's something that I started with them 2 months ago. And so we're going through this book and talking about how do we break the dysfunctional cycle of doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results, right? So we have to change our mindset, and we have to change how we're looking at it. This is a great book, and I talk about it so much that I'm also doing this with supporting another district with this, but we meet every month and we talk about how does this look in our buildings? What can we do? And it's written so well that it's for, like, for teachers where they can see some of the things that they've been doing, how we can make subtle changes and have significant impact. And so that's one of the ways that we're looking at how we're redefining success, by looking at how do we break the cycle of doing the same thing over and over again. Next slide, please. And so this is my PR resistance. This is my favorite slide here. And so as I've been going into the buildings, which has been amazing, I was in one of the buildings and they have the school families where they get together and they're having conversations. There's a school, and it was really, you can't really see it from the picture here, but there are pictures of all the students that's in that particular school family and how they're connecting. And one of the buildings, they have a person is selected and they're talking about celebrating family cultures, and how kids can walk past this particular display and learn about a classmate, which I thought was amazing. This is my first time in the building reading a story on building belonging. And then I was supposed to be there 10 minutes. I ended up there 1 hour and 15 minutes. And then the students wanted to show me their different parts of their classroom. They wanted me to make sure I felt like I belonged. This is at one of our schools where Dr. Brown, it was teaching a lesson on cultural sensitivity that I absolutely loved, because one of the things that he shared is that we talk about cultural proficiency, but we may not ever get to the point where we truly understand and be proficient in every culture, but we can have a sensitivity and awareness to the cultures that are around us. And it was such a moving experience in his building. You may have seen this, and this was this picture right here of Dr. Miss Candace Brown. This student was new, and she has these lessons where she's going around and she's interviewing. It's like a 2-minute interview, and the children share things about themselves. She's doing this with every student in the building, which I thought was miraculous. But this highlights, I was on social media the other night, and I want to talk about this particularly. There was, I think it was maybe like almost 200 and something likes on this picture. This picture was taken when I was in the building, and I said, we have to do a better job of sharing what we're doing, because parents did not even know that this was something that was occurring. And it was amazing. And the feedback has been extraordinary. Plus, it's good for our staff to know that what they're doing matters to our community and our families. ISC, sure, I hope I'm saying that right, gives a grant. And so this is a book card. Am I saying that right, Cheryl? Is it ISC, the grant? And so this is
from mini grants, yeah.
Grant, right. So this is a grant. This book card right here is a grant that a school wrote, and it has all of the cultural proficiency, some cultural proficiency books on the card. But not only that, the teachers went and came up with lessons that they could talk about and ask questions as they're reading. So there was this collaboration along with having the card. The librarian pulls books. There are books that have been purchased. So this is an example of something that the ISC mini grant process brought to fruition. And then this is one of our teachers reading a culturally diverse text in a kindergarten classroom. Next slide, please. We've also had an opportunity, you see Dr. Momin participated in a family engagement symposium. He presented on the Thursday from the superintendent's lens. I presented more of a teacher-student focused lens on that Friday. This is a presentation in the summer on the DEIB work. This is our teachers engaging in our, administrators engaging in our DEIB at the dance party. Dr. Momin also shared the importance of supporting female leaders at the University of Pennsylvania. In September, I was able to go on the Fox 29 represent the district, talking about how we're building belonging in our district. I also was I was the only K-12 presenter at an international conference on belonging and equity and inclusion. So what I'm saying is we're trying to get the word out of how this premier district is and how you support this DEIB work. And lastly, on the side is a race for education with the Lower Merion Police Department and a community organization that held a basketball tournament for the police and the community and students, and they engaged in a tournament, and Mrs. Buckman and I were at that tournament. Next slide, please. And so I want to share briefly the interconnectedness, and Megan will share, and then we can open up for questions of how we're interconnected across the district. But I wanted to just focus on Ms. Buckman. Next slide, Megan. Oh, there we go.
Oh.
So one of the things that Amy has been doing is it came through our AITF community engagement subcommittee, is looking at how we are providing translation services. There was a meeting with ELD teachers, social workers, and myself to identify needs, Amy, and how we're coordinating these efforts, looking at our lunch menus, school messenger translations. Are parents able to receive the messages in the languages that they desire, so that there's this communication? I participated in an equity audit for another district, and that was one of the big ahas for them, is that when we're sending information out, the families it's not a dialogue, that we're just disseminating. And so I love that we're having this conversation here, so that there's this dialogue, that there's this back and forth exchange with our EL families, so that they know that, again, that sense of belonging, and they have a place that they are heard, and that they are learning how they can support their children as well. Next, please. We have some upcoming events. Friday is the MLK Day of Service. And we also have Jazz and Friends Reading Night. through GSIB that's coming up in March the 22nd. So we're hoping that we will support these events. We have an equity committee meeting February the 22nd that I'm hoping that all of you that are on this call will also join us on that evening as well, to continue to have this interconnectedness across the scope of our work. Next, please. We also worked on updating our website to streamline, update information on inclusivity and belonging with Mrs. Buckman in her office, reflecting this Office of Equity and Compliance with myself and Ms. Shafer and LaToya, so that we can again make sure that we are meeting the needs of our families. Next slide, please. And I will turn it over to Miss Megan Shafer at the right time.
Right. My part in this is so you get a break for a second. Because I think just based on all of your passion and energy that you've shared in just the last 30 minutes, but you share every day, and I get to be front and center for that, and for which I'm very grateful. You'd think that she could do it all herself, right? So that was, I'm here to say that this isn't just Shawanna's work. And that was important by design of, Dr. Mameen, in thinking about how do we structure a position to say it's not just her work or that position's work, but it continues to be all of our work in advancing the policy of the board, the mission of the district, to ensure that, as Shawanna pointed out earlier, that equity becomes the foundation, and that we see our work through that lens. And so just in terms of the shift in the organizational structure, which there haven't been a lot of shifts like this in a while, Shawanna and I were talking about that the other day, but Shawanna is part of the cabinet team, and therefore, the intentionality there is that the conversations that are happening at our weekly cabinet meetings, that she has insight and has the opportunity, and in fact encouraged to weigh in, whether it be an operational issue, a transportation, nutritional services. It's not just about the work necessarily that happens in front of students in a classroom, but the work that we do every day, and being intentional about that. So I think it's important to also, if you haven't seen this piece of organizational chart, this is what it looks like from a cabinet lens. Shawanna is part of that cabinet team. Oh, there's a circle. The other piece of that is also Shawanna can't be a standalone, she needs other, additional people to support her work and the vision that she's setting for the work as we move forward. And she's referenced that already. Our principals and other district leaders have already been invested in the work. And what she shared, although I credit her in having, already enhanced that, but also giving us a really nice way to talk about it globally, here's what we're doing. There has been work that's been ongoing. So being able to sort of bring it together, share really bright spots across the district is, more or less an immediate impact that she's brought, among others. But then the school-based liaisons that she mentioned are, again, funded positions, so that we have at the school building someone that has that as a sort of an EPR stipend-based position to ensure that the work is moving forward at the building level. And then just another example of where this position, and Shawanna in particular, but this position has made an impact. We talked about a little bit of the restructuring, but having a lens on when things aren't going well, if we have concerns that are raised, having Shawanna be a part of the problem solving process is really critical in a lot of cases. And so we have realigned some of the work that we had in place before, which was a reporting form, so that that reporting form flows through our office. So in addition to the school building getting notice of that, our office also gets an immediate notification that we can go in and support the building team with whatever that concern may be. So that's, again, some adjustments that we're making to make it all make sense for hopefully the organization and also for the community.
So back to me. And this is the end. One of my favorite quotes is, do the best you can until you know better. Then when you know better, do better. And so I love this because, again, as I said, I don't have all the answers. I've been a part of doing this work for at least 20 years in multiple, from an urban setting, a different a Bucks County suburban setting, and now here in Montgomery County. And in each of those places that I've been able to take something from my experience and package it and make it better. I enjoy and I have enjoyed every second that I've been in this district. I think the reason that I focus so much on belonging, and you've heard me say this if you've been in other groups with me, is that from the moment I came here to Lower Merion, the amount of people who check on me to make sure that I'm okay, and I'm talking community-wise as well, to share their experiences, to ask me. Yesterday, someone called and said, what can I do to assist you? What can I do to help? And I mentioned even in the beginning, a meeting with Cheryl and Allison, just sitting at the table with them to even discuss when things come up, and then the community groups. And I always say, one of the things that I'm glad that Alexis is on, Dr. McGloin is on, because in my first cabinet meeting, and it sits with me, I don't take what people say about me or to me lightly. I sit up at night and I think about things. I left the board meeting last night with a lot of notes, and I thought about it through the night. I think I sleep and write at the same time or something, because I like dream these things. But she said to me, we want you to be successful. We're going to support you so that you can be successful in this work. I show up every day because I believe in this work. This is my life's passion. This is my 28th year in education. And I hope that what I shared earlier, that you can see I absolutely, my favorite part of the day, my favorite part of the job is being in school buildings. And so I'm grateful that I was able to clear off time to get into the school buildings, because this work, you can't just do it from central office. You have to be involved in community events. You have to be involved with community groups. You have to be involved with the students and having conversations and sitting with them. I shared in the education committee meeting, I met with a student. I'm a woman of a certain age, and I met with this 17-year-old student, and they were doing a feature for me for the newspaper. But after the interview, this student and I, a Caucasian male, 17-year-old, we sat and talked about diversity in dress, and how the way this particular student expresses themselves in dress, and then how I express myself in dress. And so it was just such a phenomenal conversation, and it just reminded me of why it's important to just sit down and have conversations. The world around us is cruel, and it's in the cancel culture, and it's attacking. I love when I have an opportunity to just sit and talk, learn from you, you learn from me, we learn from each other, and then we can grow together. That's what this work is about. It's not about pointing fingers, the blame game, and attacking. It's about sitting at the table and trying to figure out how we are going to make sure that this generation behind us leaves, and we leave the world better for them, this next generation that's coming behind them. And how do we elevate their voice? How do we make sure that what they are saying, that they know that it matters? And one of the things I share with the students at the high schools is I said, please share. It doesn't mean that we're always going to be able to agree with what you're saying, but you have a place where you can come and where you can speak. I'm meeting with a student later this week. I'm actually meeting with a student in a student group because I want to make sure that people know that I'm accessible, I'm available, and that I'm here. And so with that, next slide.
Is that the last one?
Oh, I thought the last slide was any questions, but okay. Any questions?
It's not moving.
Any questions? That's the last slide. We're going to start with Jill Altschuler.
My favorite person. Go ahead, Miss Jill.
Shocking, right? Is that so surprising?
That's
I'll
not at
just
all.
ask one for now and then wait my turn for another. Okay, now I have to like eeny, meeny, miny, moe. Okay, so in terms of the communication of the work being done, communication is always, I think, another hot topic. So I have noticed on, and I know you're working on the website with Amy, or Amy's working on the website to streamline things. If there's like a link to part of the equity page is the work that has been done, and I'm sure is ongoing, just so everyone knows, like, work is being done. It's hard. It's nice to know some details than some of the nitty gritty, because again, we are, this is our kids and our district. So, some of the specifics of what has been started, what is more currently being worked on now, what's, on the agenda. Is that something that's possible? Like really?
Yes, ma'am. And so one of the things I think I've spent, and you know this because you're always in all the meetings, because we're still working on the website is one of the reasons I've taken this time to meet with every group who's asked to meet with me and to share, right? Because I do believe in communicating, and I do think that it's important, but I also think that there's multiple ways of communicating. Well, where some people love to go on the website and research and read, there's some people that want to hear it from me, and they want to be able to interact and have conversations with me. I think that section of what I shared about what's going on in our, everything that I shared today is current from when I started here in August. And so all of those things that I'm discussing, is the trainings, the liaisons. We didn't have liaisons last year. Thank you to Dr. McGloin. It was something that I had in my previous district, and she said, do you want to implement that here? This is a large district. This district is twice the size of my previous district. I could not do some of the things without the liaisons. And so, but then we had to build a structure. And so some things that we want that's going to be immediate, it takes time. And so that's why I've been committed to, whenever there's an opportunity to speak or to share what's going on as we are working on this website so that it's robust, and it's going to change. So I can have something on there one day and it's something completely different. Although this presentation has some components of the same elements, it's completely different because as I meet with groups, I add something. Someone asks a question and I make sure that I add that, like the All For It plan. I just added that last month when we met with the equity committee meeting. My previous things had some more information about me. I wanted to make sure that this presentation was more about the work that we've been doing, the book study that we are part of, the professional learning that's occurring. One of our board members asked, what happens when we have people go to professional development? Well, I can share now and say that, like today, when the teachers are at this professional development they're at today, and since I'm not there, I have Latoya there, we will meet, we'll debrief, we share it, and then it goes out in the community, into the building, so that they'll have an understanding. And so this work is evolving. It takes a lot to even build the infrastructure. Amy and I have been talking about I'll give an example of communication. We've been talking about the vignettes with the definitions and the terms for months. Schedules happen, things happen. Yesterday was the first day we were able to film our first 4 segments. And so that's going to come out to the community again. And so please know that I'm trying to communicate as effectively. I think it was you that asked the question about our care meetings and notes, and we're trying to make sure. So I've been talking to Vic and Alexis. And so if there are notes, we are memorializing those things so that families can have it. This is recorded. This is recorded so that we can make sure that people who can't be here because of work schedules can also share, or in the convenience of a time that fits with them. So there's a lot of learning. And Cheryl will tell you in the beginning, I'm very private. And I was like, oh Lord, because, I speak so quickly. I was like, oh my God, I hope that, but I had to grow in my own self and say, yes, please record me because this is a need for our families. And so it was a growth opportunity for myself as well. So I'm trying, Miss Jill. I'm trying.
I know. Just some suggestions on I'm not saying it's not being done, but again, like suggestions from, not just me, like the community. And, it's nice to know that what I had, suggested, not, I wasn't the only one, but to have notes or, recapping the care meetings, because it is, obviously a really hard time. I'm glad to know that's being done. Like,
But I
sometimes.
will tell you, but let me just share this. So we recap, because you've been in the care meetings, and there'll be like a chart tablet, but it may be 3 sentences.
Right.
And so it's not going to be a robust. So that's why me sharing or having Vic come, like he'll be at the equity committee meeting. Gene Stanley will be at the next equity committee meeting, so that they can also verbalize what's occurring, because,
Right.
Thanks, Shawanna. We have another question from Abigail Rubin. Abigail, can you unmute yourself? I can unmute you, but
Yes, can you hear me?
yes.
ma'am.
Hi, I'm not gonna turn my video on because I'm walking, so I will look a little crazy. I have a question about the liaisons. I have a daughter in Kenwood Elementary, and I'm just curious who the liaisons work with on the ground. Are they working with the school counselors? How are issues identified? Is it the students coming to the liaisons themselves? How does the structure work?
Okay, so the equity liaisons are teachers.
Okay.
And so they have their full caseload, whatever grade that they're teaching, and their full responsibilities. For this first year, one of the things what we're doing is we're understanding the work. A lot of times we jump in and we have positions, and we haven't taken time to develop the work and know what it means, and how, so that it can be systemic and it can sustain within the district. So right now, the liaisons are working directly with the building administrators, and myself. Okay. So right now we're just doing a book study on what is equity, what is belonging, and eventually it'll evolve, but they are teachers. So they receive a minimal stipend just to be boots on the ground. And we meet every month. So I'm looking at my notes from last month. We talked about what was occurring in their buildings, what's going on, how we communicate. Ms. Jill, how are we communicating with families? One of the questions was, how do we know what's going on? How do parents know what's going on? Do parents and students know who to contact if there are needs in the building? How do we break this dysfunctional cycle? Who are the 6% students that Dr. Mamie referred to? So again, naming the students, who are the ones we need to support. So it's conversation at that level. And eventually we hope to bring some counselors and social work. We do have one social worker that's volunteering her time to be a part of it. So we're going to grow it. But right now it's just, it's engaging in conversations about what does this work look like in their buildings. And one of the things I just want to share, Cheryl, before you cut me off, before you get me, is what was huge, what was so amazing in our first meeting. And Dr. McGowan will tell you, she said, you didn't invite me to the first meeting. And I said, no, because I just wanted it to be me. And one of the things that the teachers were so excited to just interact with each other. Like they are doing work in their buildings and they had not had a time to connect with each other and talk about the carts, for example. And then someone said, oh, how do we get the carts for our building? And then someone shared about the Brandon's work with cultural sensitivity and building trust. And so how do we engage with community organizations? And so it's just great time of sharing right now. And we hope to grow it. So I know that was a long answer, but I probably got you a good mile while I was talking, while you were walking.
You flatter me. Okay, thank you.
Actually, Cicely Reese has a question, but her hand wouldn't raise. So she's next,
Okay.
and Carly.
Hi, Cicely.
Hi, Shawanna. Good morning. Thanks so much for this presentation. It's so great to see you. Your energy is infectious, and I really appreciate that about you. I wanted to find out, just in the interest of equity, and I apologize because I was not on the phone. We're not on the call right away. If there's any thought to meeting with the ISC and at the HSA presidents for all of the schools, and if there's any thought to attending, any of the HSA meetings that the individual schools have with the principals, like their monthly meetings. So I'm one of the co-presidents for the high school for Lower Merion, as well as co-president for BC, because I just don't have enough on my plate. but I wanted to find out if that
Yes,
is an
yes,
option.
yes,
Because
yes.
I know, and the reason is I know that there's a lot of, there's a lot of different things happening at the different schools, and, the HSAs as well as the administration tends to focus on the local constituency, but in the interest of addressing everything at a district level, I think it might be helpful if you were attending some of these meetings and if collectively we could have a conversation, because I believe there is the thought that there are some schools that are, getting resources that others are not. And I'm not one of those people that thinks that, but I honestly don't know. So I thought maybe it might be helpful if, excuse me, if there's a forum where we can all get together and have a conversation, because I like the work that you're doing, although we haven't met in person. And I would love to, for us to collectively figure out how
the
we
inside
can
there's a little spring up in there.
work together.
Absolutely, yes. So yes, and Jill says it's a great idea, so it means it's a yes. So if you could,
And what's the best way to get in touch with you?
yes, I was going to say, Latoya
Okay.
Baskerville Uzel manages my calendar. I go where she tells me to go. And then she checks on me to make sure I've arrived where I'm supposed to be. So if you can send that to her, I would definitely, and that's why when I was answering the question for Jill, I love that opportunity. And I actually love being in person more than Zoom, because I feel like I can engage and interact and people really can get to know me better that way. So I would love to come to some of those meetings as my schedule permits.
Thank you. And
we can make
your
sure
energy
I'm
is
gonna-
definitely contagious over Zoom,
Oh.
but if you could drop her contact information in the chat, if someone could do that, that'd be great.
I'll
Thank
do that.
you.
Yep.
Cicely, it's Latoya Baskerville. She's one of the secretaries in the admin. I'll help you out with that.
Thank you. Thank you for the
Thank
kind
you.
words as well.
Oh, there it is. Megan entered it. Thanks, Megan. All right, Carly has a question. Carly Goldberg.
Hi, Carly.
Hi, excuse me. Hi, Shawanna. Thank you so much. Every time I've heard you speak, you're just phenomenal. Thank you. And thank you for everyone for being able to gather here today. One of the things I wanted to talk about is as we think about equity and inclusion and diversity, is that we think about disabilities and access. I feel like that gets left out of the conversation, and I'll just be very specific. The reason why I am homebound with severe chronic illness and I can't attend the care meetings in person. And I've asked on a number of occasions how can we make them a hybrid opportunity? Yes, meeting in person is phenomenal. I'm an extrovert. I love being in shared space with people. I did it for my whole career, but I can't anymore. But I want to ensure that when we're talking about DEI and we're talking about belonging, that we're talking about accessibility and we're talking about disability, and not just physical disability, but intellectual disability or cognitive or neurodiversity, and how we access information. So how do parents access information, and how are the kids who are learning and need to learn in different ways are accessing the diversity, equity information? I think I can't remember, there was a survey, there was something, and I think there was an issue around DEI, and there was an issue of it needed to be read aloud to kids, but it wasn't allowed to be read aloud. I can't remember the details, so I can't speak on that specifically, but I just want us to continue to think about who has access to information, when and how. And also, as we continue to move forward with meetings, how, especially the care meetings and any other meetings, how can we make that available to parents and guardians and people in the community who can't access them physically in person?
Oh my gracious. What? Oh my, mind blown comments. I so appreciate what you're saying. And one of the things I said in our liaison and meeting, and this is why I say I enjoy coming to have these conversations, because I met with CSC, right? And in my conversation with CSC, I learned so much about how we're interacting with our students who are receiving special education services. And then I came away with a greater appreciation for that. And so just your comments. So even when I'm having conversations, and I apologize that I didn't say it today, but I do say diversity, it is all encompassing, right? It is how we make the needs, and your parent piece is huge, because sometimes we think that parents are not engaged, but you gave a great example of you can't get to the meetings. And so how do we look at this? And I wrote it down so that I can make sure, how do we engage families who cannot be in attendance? And so although I said I prefer to be in person, how do we make sure that there's this hybrid of maybe some will be in person and some may be, and it's something that I could work with Dr. McGloin on. Again, I'm new, so the format was already set, so we can look and have conversations about this for next year, so that we can make sure that we are honoring and honoring the dignity and the voice of all families. So I want to thank you for pointing that out, and you have my word that I will be committed to trying to make sure we can figure out how to support those needs.
Can I just ask a quick follow-up question to that?
Yes.
Shawanna, is that okay?
Yes.
Is it possible to talk about implementing something this year? We have the technology. We have several care meetings. I'll be specific about those. We've done hybrid meetings before with the district. We do them in lots of places of practice. Can we consider doing it for this year? I wouldn't want myself or anyone else to miss out on information and participation. So wondering if we can consider, and again, by the way, I'm happy to reach out to you and collaborate, and like I do this all day long in my own personal life. And
yes, please reach out to me, but I will, because the schedule was set, I will defer to Dr. McGloin. Do you mind, Alexis, responding?
Yeah, I mean, we've had conversations about hybrid's really difficult, right? Some in person and some not in person, and managing that type of an environment, especially when we talk about care with all the breakout rooms. So pretty much the way that we've done it is one or the other, either be virtual or in person, because it's so difficult to manage. But we can continue having those conversations to see if there's a way. I don't know what it is, but I'm happy to talk to Victorious about it. I think it's probably one or the other versus both. That's why we don't do instruction that way as well, because it is really difficult to manage, especially with the way care is run. But I think that that's something we can continue to have conversations about for sure.
Well, I'll say that it is not easy. It's messy, but diversity, equity, inclusion work is messy and not easy. And so, and it's not learning like students learning, it's parent participation. So I'd really like to not kind of shove it off and it be like, oh, it's hard. I don't think that's a good enough reason not to really stop and think about how we can do that.
I agree 100%.
Yeah, and Carly, if you don't mind, if you send me an email, maybe we'll be actually meeting with Sage Wellness this week, and maybe it may be one session or the other. Like maybe one session could be in person and one session can be like we can discuss those things. But again, I do want to honor you and thank you for bringing that to our attention. And I'm glad that Dr. McGloin is here because she can speak to the fact that this has been raised. But please reach out to me, okay? Thank you.
All right, Shawanna, we have a question from Joe Toto, and then Christina N is next.
Hello.
Hi there. Nice to meet you. Sorry.
Wait, Christina, I think we're going with Joe first.
Joe
sorry.
first.
And then Christina's next. I'm sorry. I could see how that was.
Hi, Joe.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Thanks for your time today. I guess I'm curious if there's a specific agenda item or kind of list of goals and things that the committee is looking to accomplish this year. I'm trying to just get a sense for what changes that we should expect in terms of policy, curriculum, and things regarding the DEIB program in Lower Merion. It seems like there's been some changes made in the past to both curriculum and policy, as well as student events that have been impacted by the program. And I, as a parent, just looking forward to the educational experience of my kids. I'm trying to understand what might be on the come here in terms of how this new policy is going to impact what's currently in place.
So I think that the policy, Megan, Megan, oh, you're over here now. When was the policy adopted?
The policy was adopted almost 2 years ago, and the administrative regulations were approved last June. And so really, they were intended to codify work that was already being done. And also, per the board's direction, kind of set forth the kind of ongoing vision for equity work in the district, as Shawanna sort of described here. So there are many facets to it, and it's not something, as I think for all the reasons discussed today, is something that happens overnight. There are a lot of different examples of where it's happening right now, but in terms of specific goals connected to that policy, that's some of the work that the Achievement Imperative Task Force is doing. That's some of the work that in departments such as curriculum and instruction is doing. So, I think it's just to answer the initial question that you shared with me, is that was the timeline that for the policy.
And so, Joe, if I can, I want to be clear. Equity, there's a continuum that PSBA, if I can call you Joe, that PSBA puts out, and and it talks about equity as a topic to equity as a foundation. When equity is a topic, that's when you're talking about programs, right? It's just a checkbox. We're doing DEI, it's a checkbox. When we get to the part where equity is a foundation, like it is here in Lower Merion, it is infused in everything, right? So when Megan showed the organizational chart of me sitting at the table.
No,
I just wanted to clarify if you can use, if I can clarify.
Sure, no, I mean, I think you brought up some really great points earlier in the discussion about making sure that resources are available, to kids. And I have younger kids, so I'm sorry for using the word kids all the time, but they're elementary school age kids. Making sure that resources are available, to everybody, kind of regardless of their position. But there's also been, as I'm sure you're aware, it's kind of also a pretty charged item in terms of the press and kind of politicalization as well. And there's been some pretty high profile events and instances in the district in terms of certain groups with, additional learning opportunities that have been isolated only to certain groups that have gender, orientation a certain direction, while there's not other policies and or programs in place for children who may not identify that way. And so I guess I'm, as I'm looking at kind of the landscape of how, these policies and this philosophy is impacting educational opportunity, I'm pretty alert to wanting to keep an eye on whether or not, our kids are going to have the same opportunities across the board for services based on their academic need, and not necessarily how they identify or how they, are born with their racial identity, that type of thing. So, there's been some of those changes and some of those differences in the district, and some parents, that I interact with are concerned about some of these things as well. And I haven't seen any feedback along that line of opinion, much publicly, but it's something that I'm concerned about. And I just want to kind of make sure that, as we talk about, opportunity and inclusion, that we continue to talk about, really kind of equal opportunity for all kids in the programs and resources that are available to them.
Okay, so
did I mishear? Did Mr. Toto interrupt Ms. Shawanna James-Coles as she was trying to answer his question?
I believe I'm having a conversation. I didn't believe I interrupted.
Let me just, going back to the continuum. And so because it's infused in everything and making sure that every student, so equality is making sure that is everyone given the same. And that's why when I went through the DEIB at the dance party, equity is making sure that students get what they need to be successful. So because one group may get something that they need to be successful does not mean that we're taking from another group and that group is not going to get what they need to be successful, right? And I think we all understand that baseline of that. I'm familiar with people who feel that sometimes when we're using these words, like you said, these charged words, they can feel charged, that they think we're taking to give to somebody else. We're not. We're looking at each child, each individual. If you were listening to the board meeting last night, I'm like, who are the names behind the numbers? We're looking at each child. What does that child, you said you have 2 younger children. What do your children need to be successful? Your children's needs may be completely different than someone else's needs, but we may have to give something different to that other student, may have to give them more so that they can be successful. Because I think when we look at this, we're all pieces of this puzzle. We all make up this district, right? And I think you're here, you're excited, you brought your kids you raising your kids here for a reason, but so are all the other families.
For sure.
So it takes time, really. And that's one of the things when I started, people were like, what's your goals? What's your agenda? What are you going to do? I'm not doing anything until I am going to these buildings and I'm having conversations with families, that I'm interacting with students. I'm a former building principal. No one could come in and tell me how to run my building if you haven't sat and talked to me. And so that's my approach to this work. I'm having these conversations. I appreciate your comments. But I want to assure you, we're not taking from one to give to the other. We are looking at this. Even yesterday, we had a conversation about, we have things for our students who really excel. We have some things and supports in place for the students who are struggling, but what about the children in the middle? So we are having these conversations. So trust that we're sitting at the table, and if you're not physically at the table having the conversation, someone is elevating your voice at the table. So I appreciate your comments, and we are looking at all those things.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Shawanna. Christina had wanted to say something and she got bumped down because her hand went down, but Christina.
Hi, Christina.
I'm still here. Hi. Sorry. Joe basically asked a version of the same question that I was going to ask. I'm an HSA co-vice president at Marion Elementary. And I think it was kind of echoed earlier. Cicely brought it up about communication. I think to Joe's point, I think at least at our school, it seems like people are interested in the work that's being done. It's just a little confusing in terms of us figuring out what that work actually is. And I think I heard you say that you're still working through all of that. But I think in terms of, so I believe, I know that we have representatives that come to the CARE meetings and ISC meetings and all those different things. But that information getting disseminated, I guess, to our families is not happening. And us as a HSA at our school specifically are trying to figure out the best way to do that. And I guess to Joe's point, it would be helpful if we could figure out a way to do that. I know that we have reps coming. If there's a way to get those reps to disseminate the information to our schools, maybe there would be less confusion and less, I don't want to say finger pointing, but it's when you don't have the information, yes, you can assume different things, negative or positively, right? And I think that could change the tone in a big way if there was just more information rolled out. I think that's a topic. I think our district could do a better job in general of being transparent and communicating with parents. And I think that if we could all figure that out, then, we'd be in a better place.
Thank you, Christina. I wrote those things down, and I have already agreed to come to some of the meetings and have those conversations. We're also looking at how we're going to maybe broaden the scope of the work in the CARE meetings and try to provide opportunities for others to participate and share. So we've written all those things down, but I do want to let everyone and remind everyone, I've been here 6 months. And if you think about a 6-month-old baby, what are they capable of doing, right? And so this has really been, I think I'm pulling myself up a little bit now. I think I've spoken twice in a board meeting now, or one in a committee and one in a board. I'm getting there, right? And so it takes a lot to unpack with 11 schools, 11 building structures. Every building's culture and climate is different. I'm in meetings all day, every day, it seems like. And so I'm trying to take all that information, synthesize it, and I'm willing to have conversations as evidence of me being here today. But I did write those things down. Thank you so much.
Thank you. If I could just make one more quick point, kind of goes with that. I'm a little bit, I don't want to say embarrassed, but there seems to be a lot of initiatives that's going on in the school districts, maybe since COVID, maybe since Dr. Mumine came into his position. But I feel like me personally as a parent, you get hit with so many things that are going on in the district. I have a hard time figuring out the difference between the cultural proficiency lessons that my children are having at school, the work that the CARE committee does, and I'm probably missing a couple other committees as well, so I apologize. But if there was a way to, I guess, maybe they're all intertwined and maybe they're not, but I don't understand that. And I feel like I'm not alone. I think that would be helpful as well.
So at the, just so, and I appreciate that comment. So at the last equity committee meeting, we have been tying those things together, right? What does this work? And I'm having people, like I just said, at the next one, February 22nd. So we had at the last one, all of the different departments speaking about how there's this interconnectedness of the work. The next meeting, we have some of our consultants that'll come in, that'll speak to what they're doing and how it's supporting the work in the district. And so we're going to continue that. We're going to have principals come and speak about what's going on in their buildings and how, because that came up as a comment in the last equity committee meeting, the onus of the work, who's owning the work in the buildings. And so again, as I'm sitting and having these conversations, I'm learning and I'm trying as one person to get this information out as quickly as I can and synthesize it so that it's meaningful. And the one thing I realized is that there are a lot of committees in this district, not just the ones you mentioned. There has to be about 50. And I've attended probably about 51 meetings, even though it's 50 committees. And how do we show the connections to all of these different groups? So I'm trying to understand it and as much as possible as I'm learning it to connect, because what you said is important. And we need to be able to show what the work, not only what the work that's going on, how is it connected to the greater scope of the work of the district.
All right, I want to be mindful of those that have their hands raised that did not get to ask a question yet. So Monica Romeo is next.
I'm gonna take a sip of water because I'm on the hot seat. I'm burning.
And I was caught off guard because I figured.
Sorry about that, Monica. I should have given you a hands up.
It's okay. It's okay. Ms. James-Coles, I want to welcome you. This is the second time I hear you speak, and I'm sorry we haven't met personally yet, but I love everything I've heard from you. So thank you for that. My question does not come to put you on the spot, but rather to kind of ask how we can support you and what we can do to make you want to stay with us forever. My question is, how does Dr. Moomin's announcement affect you in your work here at the district? Thank you.
If you are putting me on the spot.
No, and if you haven't had a chance to process, then that's okay. I just want you to have the opportunity to say anything you might want to say, because we're all kind of trying to process this right now.
No, it was a shock. I will share, I received lots of phone calls yesterday. And I did receive a lot of phone calls, even from people in the community that asked the very same question you asked, how can you support me? When I say that I know you guys don't know me yet, but I'm what you see is what you get kind of person. And when I say, I'm a little emotional about this, so it's a little raw. When I say that I have not felt like I belonged in a place, I'm gonna tear up a little bit. I mean that sincerely. I shared in other meetings, my husband told me that I'm excited to come to work. And so I don't have any plans to go anywhere. I am happy here. As long as I can do the work. This is my life's work. This is my passion. This is the culmination at this point in my career where like I said, I've been in 2 other districts. I wasn't looking to come to Lower Merion, but for some reason there was a draw for me to come here. And I'm so grateful that Dr. Moomin saw something in me and wanted me to be here as well as the committee. I wasn't looking to leave where I was, but I am so happy that I did. And so I don't have any plans. And I said to Megan yesterday in Alexis, the more people, when people were like, are you okay? Are you leaving? Then like I became emotional. I wasn't emotional initially because this is my work. This is what I do. I just want to be in a place where I can do this work. I'm a mom of 2 children. This is my legacy. Some of you don't know this about me, but I 2 years ago went through a very serious illness. And one of the things that I wanted to do on the other side of my illness was to make sure that I left a legacy to my children, that my children will be proud of me. And so when I think about your children, it's important to me. And so that's why I take the time in these meetings. I take the time to have conversations because it means something to me. When you say things to me and you ask me questions, I write it down because I really want to make a difference. And so as long as I can be in a place that I can make a difference, that I can show up and be my authentic self, and that you accept me as my authentic self, then I will be here. And as long as that doesn't change, then we're good. So now you saw me crying. So thank you so much for even asking, what can we do? What can you do to support me? Because sometimes you're in places and this work is hard and no one asks, no one's checked on you. No one cares about what you're going through. The nights that you sit up thinking about things. And so to be in a place that people ask, what can we do? It means something to me. It means something to me. So thank you.
Thank you so much. You made my day. I was hesitant to ask, but I am so glad I did because I love the answer. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That was a great answer. Okay, now I've lost track if Jill or Cicely was next. Cicely, I know you had wanted to chime in on a topic that we've now passed over. So
I did. If you wouldn't mind, that would be great. So I just had a quick question. So coming off the heels of Shawanna talking about being her authentic self, and I always say that to my girls, you want to be the best version of your authentic self, and you want to bring that to work and to school every day, and you want to go to bed feeling good about how you interact with people. And I just had a quick question, and it's actually kind of somewhat directed at Joe because I felt like he was speaking in code. So I am just curious in terms of the work, right? What is it that he is concerned about? I mean, I'm assuming this is bigger than, and I was a Marian parent and one of the co-HSA presidents last year, and so not this year, but I'm just wondering if there is anything specific, because he said a whole lot and I felt like it was really packed, but it was very unspecific. So I'm just wondering if there's something that specifically needs to come out so that we can, as a community, address it.
Sure.
Because I don't know if I'm going left or right as a result of kind of what you shared or didn't share. Thank you.
Sure. Would you like me to respond to that, Cicely?
Yes, I'll stop talking.
Great. No, I think it's a big topic, and I look at it under a couple of different frames. There's obviously, I think, the real pragmatic work of truly increasing resources for people who need resources and having equality of resources for people across the district is a really big deal. There's some aspect, obviously, in our culture today of both political and social activism and politicalization and partisanship associated with a lot of these items now. I think we'd be, kind of remiss to not identify that a lot of those things exist. And so there's kind of an aspect of this for me where I am concerned that there is kind of a bleeding between of people's individual, either social or political views around certain topics that are wrapped up in kind of equity policy that I don't necessarily feel is always something that I think is the purview of what public schooling should be or public education should be for my children. And there's some examples in the district and a lawsuit in the district around, certain teachers being proponents of certain type of, lifestyle choices for themselves and promoting that with their students that, I think may blend the lines between what I think is appropriate in a classroom setting and what I don't think is appropriate in a classroom setting. There's all kinds of examples, in the press, you can read about books and things that are promoting, some aspects of gender ideology and gender diversification that may be sexualized in a nature, that may not be appropriate from a sexualization maturity perspective for children, but entirely appropriate from a gender diversity perspective. So there's all types of things kind of happening in the press around, DEI programs and their roles in public institutions that for some parents like me, it causes a bit of concern about whether there's an inappropriate focus on social issues that, you know, are beyond the appropriate purview of what public education and educational excellence is, you know, really the focus, while fully understanding and appreciating, you know, the validity and the necessity of doing work that creates equal opportunity for students of all ilks.
I'm going to ask Megan to take this one because this goes directly to our policy, which is extremely clear. And Megan, I'd like.
Wait, but so hold on just 1 second. So Joe, I just wanted to understand. So is this more related to like gender and identity, sexual orientation, or is race being dumped in here too?
No, I think it gets to, so when you read the equity policy or the equity policy announcement from the board specifically says that resources will be allocated in a way, and it's kind of unclear to me exactly what this means, but resources can be allocated in a way that are specific based off of the identitarian or the terminology I don't quite entirely have from the legal perspective, but basically resources within the district can be allocated across student bodies based off of kind of the key prioritization of these type of groups, whether they're underrepresented groups or under-resourced groups through history. And that seems to sometimes blend the line in the social realm or the cultural realm and into promotion of certain types of things. And so I'm just trying to understand, and my question initially was intended to understand what are the pragmatic goals and agenda items for this district, to kind of understand like where are we trying to get with this in terms of, you know, allocating resources, identifying and fully believing that we're not taking from one group to give to another, but, you know, just trying to understand the basis for opportunities that should be remained open to everybody, regardless of how either they identify or how they were born. Specific to that point, there is, I believe, an after school extra math program available only to students who identified as within a certain gender spectrum. You know, that seems to me some of these things can be naturally divisive when you go about promoting things along those lines, and that's it feels some of this stuff can feel divisive to me, but I think obviously pursuing a way of increasing opportunity and increasing resources for all is the way to go. It's again very culturally and politically charged nowadays. It's a challenge.
Okay,
Joe, I just want to say I appreciate you clarifying that. I know I shouldn't have asked you a direct question, but I appreciate you being on the call and clarifying that for me. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Megan. I think as a parent, I always want to make sure that there's a person that cares about my kid. And that's paramount for me. And I want to make sure that my child gets what they need to be successful as a parent. And I think that sometimes when we engage in these conversations too, it distracts from the work of making sure. When I sat in that second grade classroom this week and these children are talking about how they're going to be kind to each other, what are things they can do to make sure that someone feels like they're accepted? That's what matters to me. And so I would hope that people would want someone, regardless of all the things that was mentioned, that cares about kids. That's it. I want to make sure that we care about our kids, all kids. Megan.
Yeah, and I mean, I took some notes, Joe, while you were talking, and I think there's you're seeking some information that isn't going to be like kind of here. And when you talk about allocation of resources, you talk about how we budget, how we're allocating funds, and because we are, you know, we positioned where we are as a district, I think it's not about as much about taking from someone, it's about making sure everyone gets what they need, which is the theme that I think Shawanna has been, you know, continuing to emphasize. So I think, you know, where there's an opportunity for someone else, it doesn't mean that someone else didn't get something. It may mean that we're addressing their needs differently. And, you know, like I said before, that the equity piece was really codifying a lot of work. I mean, there's legislation that tells us we have to treat students differently. There are accommodations that we have to provide under the law. So when we think about when that makes sense, from a universal design perspective, to say like, because a student may be identified, they get something under the law. Well, there may be a student that isn't identified, but that still has needs. We know that, over 50% of our students have had some level of trauma in their lives before they enter the school doors, and they may not be identified or have a specific need, but because of that trauma, whether it be, divorce, an accident, something that's happened in their lives that may need something a little bit differently. So that seems like a really impossible scope, but it's one that we continue to work toward, whether it's a specific classification that is set forth here, or just what a student needs because of their own experience, is what this really is driving at. And I would just also note, in addition to the equity policy, before the equity policy was even in place, the board passed the transgender and gender diverse policy. That's 259. That also is intended to, marry with the equity policy, but also it has, another set of, expectations for the administration and staff and, community to embrace or follow from the standpoint of some of the other questions that you were asking. So, I'm happy to, talk with you more. I think Shawanna and I would both be happy to talk to you more offline to try to get some additional information if there's ways that we can, get more specific with your questions.
Thank
Sure,
you.
thank you.
Thank you, Megan. We've only got a few more minutes, and I would encourage us to not, in this venue, have crosstalk with each other, because it's challenging to have a dialogue. But if someone had something specific for Shawanna, Carolyn has raised her hand and has not asked a question. Carolyn Klinghoffer, you have something for Shawanna?
Hi, everyone. I mean, just as a vote of confidence, it's nice to see so many people here talking about something that's so important. Thank you for hosting all of the people who are doing the work to make this meeting happen. And Shawanna, of course, thank you for crying. I just have a quick, very practical question. I know that it was floated at another meeting of Home and School Association presidents to have a survey of particularly the needs of middle schoolers, since there was a major change in middle school structure. And then kind of even more specifically, the Black Rock experience, a survey of the Black Rock experience, but of course, a survey of the student experience of inclusion, safety, belonging. Like a beautifully crafted survey that gets the experience of the students. I think that would be so valuable. And I think now's the time to do it, because they have been in this new middle school structure for enough time to hopefully, have some feelings about the feeling of belonging that they have. Thanks.
So we are working with GSC, their Catalyst group. They have a survey that they use in multiple districts. I've used it in my previous district on belonging and that sense of belonging. And we specifically targeted the middle schools in that district because of the transitions from elementary to middle school and then from middle school to high school. And so we have been, Dr. McGloin and I have been we've had conversation. We may, I know that there was a survey, Dr. McGloin, done in the spring of last year prior to me coming. So I'll let you talk about that. The survey from Penn will probably be maybe at the end of this year or the beginning of next year because of the way Penn cycle goes, but we are having a conversation and we want to get that feedback. But Dr. McGloin could maybe speak to the one that was completed in the spring.
But we did a survey of it was part of the equity audit that we're finalizing and coming to an end with. But our students participated 4 through 12 in it. And some of it was about belonging in their buildings, belonging in the classroom, how do they see themselves? And so that will come out through the survey. a lot of it was positive. Obviously, there's areas that we know we have to grow in based on the results of that as well. But it's different, and I agree now that, you know, we reconfigured, as everybody knows, 3 middle schools, right? And so 5th grade is now part of the middle school. Students are in different buildings than they were before. And so that is why Shawanna and I have had multiple conversations about middle level doing some kind of belonging survey for our students. And it's exactly what you're talking about, that we know that we want to do it. We want it as a baseline to continue, that we'll look at it again, because the first time tells you something, but it also then hopefully you improve based on what you get results from, and you continue on with those surveys. But we've had that conversation because we do just have a whole different structure. And, you know, obviously Black Rock looks different, but we have a different structure in all 3 buildings. And so it's important to not exclude any one of those groups, but include them all. And so that'll happen at some point in the upcoming, in the future. I don't know if it'll be the end of this year or the beginning of next year, but that has been part of our conversation, because I think we absolutely agree with you that we want to make sure that we see that happening and adjust as we need to. And so I appreciate that comment. We are definitely talking about that.
We have just under 4 minutes. Jill, did you have a concise question that works? Okay.
You're on mute.
There, you're going to have to unmute. I don't know what's wrong.
You really want me to unmute? What was that meeting on February 22nd that you said?
Committee meeting.
Oh, and everyone.
Equity ad hoc meeting, but that meeting is the equity committee meeting, the board. That committee meeting. Yes.
Right. Okay.
And it's on a Zoom at 7:00.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I forgot. Okay. I just missed that bit. The other thing real quick is something that I know Shawanna is aware of, and I have also mentioned at whatever board meetings, I can't remember at this point, is the fact that obviously there are those in our community that are not proponents, full-blown proponents of some aspects of the equity work. And because we are predominantly a more liberal community, I think they tend to get shut down, and which is, you know, people feel strongly on both sides. And I think that, you know, I've suggested being proactive, and they tend to fly under the radar because they feel attacked, because I've reached out and I want to, you know, form those relationships and see how we can come together with our different perspectives, however possible it may or may not be. So I really feel like, you know, I've asked if the district could get in front of it, get proactive, invite to the table, see if there's a way, which there may or may, I don't know. That's where I can where I end. But I just think it's really important in terms of the transparency and all of that, and not, you know, in terms of diversity, there's the diversity of thought also. And that's just how I feel. And I wanted to put that out there.
And I think I've said also that I'm willing to meet. I think people, you've seen me cry, so you know I'm sensitive to this work. But I think when Joe was speaking, and Megan offered to speak with him as well. I don't mean to call Joe out, but I think Christine, we've said I will come to the school meetings. I'm again, what you see is what you get. I'm here for all kids, all families, and to provide the support that I can. And so I've been on both sides of this work. And so I'm willing to sit down and have conversations. I mean, that's the only thing that I could add to what you said, because you did mention that to me, and I said, I'm open.
Yeah.
So we can.
I guess more of the like being proactive and inviting it in, instead of like, I'm here if you know what I mean?
Well, I can only say again, because I can only say I'm here because I'm new. So I don't know.
Right, but it's not just up to you. It's
Right.
not
So I'm saying I'm open to whomever wants to organize. So I'm here, I'm available, and I'm willing to sit and have conversations.
Okay, 1 minute. Perez, you got 1 minute.
1 minute.
I think it's Perez, is that how I say your name? You got to unmute, hun.
Sorry, Parisi.
Parisi.
Parisi, love it, love it.
I just wanted to reiterate, I appreciate all of you guys bringing your points of views. To what Jill had just stated about the feeling of we need to go and request, I've only been in this district now 2 years, and I feel like it is a little one-sided. I think I mentioned in the last meeting diversity of thought and your viewpoint on that. And so really my question is, when can us parents that may not agree with, you know, everything, when can we be heard? Because it seems like a lot of these are Zoom meetings and the questions get cut off because, you know, someone might take 10 minutes to answer their question, another might take 1. A lot of time is taken up and we can't really get to the specific questions we'd like to ask the district at board meetings, at committee meetings. So is there a way for us parents to have sit downs and talks where there's no like time constraints, because everybody has a viewpoint and everyone's valid in what they're saying. And I just would like to see a little bit more inclusion on that, to what Jill's saying.
Yes.
Sorry, I know that wasn't real. I just wanted to reiterate, it wasn't a specific question, but I did bring up the diversity of thought, and no one's really addressed it and their viewpoint on it and how it can be brought into the district.
Yes, and can you send me an email and you and I can have a conversation? Because
Yeah,
I did
sure,
remember that from
sure.
the last time, but we are over time.
That's I totally understand.
Kind of shifted some ebbs and flows in the conversation, so I remember, and I owe you an explanation.
Yeah, and I would love that open communication.
I'm here.
Okay, great.
Cheryl?
Ray, say thank you so much for your comment, and okay, sorry, I'm doing 3 things at once here. Shawanna and Megan and Alexis, thank you for being here. We so appreciate our district and the things that you do and being open to listening to everyone's point of view. That's really important for all of us. So we thank you. And again, we will see you next month, and check the district calendar for updates, but social emotional learning will be next month's hot topic, and we'll see you then. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.